Okay, yeah, let's get
You
into the
start.
news.
You got all the numbers. Everyone knows. Chandler's got all the
Man, well, we're
scary
gonna
numbers.
yeah, we're gonna start with the inflation talk. Um, we got two updates. So there's what's
They're
going
not
on in
good.
the U.S. Yeah, none of it's good. It's all terrible. I mean, U.S. inflation is up, especially the core inflation. Was up 0.6%, and overall inflation was up 0.4%. Core inflation kind of subtracts the more volatile energy items out of the overall CPI to give what they believe is a truer reflection of inflation, and so it wasn't good.
Give us Canada numbers before I go off here.
Yeah, so Canada, the numbers just came out. So our overall CPI inflation is at 6.9, which is down from 7, so a little 0.1%. We're doing it, but our core inflation actually went up the same amount, 5.4 up from 5.3. So at best, we can call that a wash.
But that's worse than a wash in the sense that they're doing all these rate hikes, and we've been talking about how we think that they did enough rate hikes. I'm not going to say we because I didn't agree, but they've done enough rate hikes that it's going to cool things off, and now we're seeing that it's not. And we've talked about how, listening to Tiff, they're basing their rate hikes off core inflation. So inflation went down 0.1%, which is not really proof that it's going down in any shape or form. But even worse, core inflation didn't even stay level. It's slightly notched up, which is a really, really bad sign. With the fact, and you mentioned it, gas has been going down even more. And so they're kind of artificially dropping the price of gas to try and hopefully bring these numbers in. So if you didn't have gas going down,
So what's your
core
solution?
inflation would be up. I'm not, so my solution, honestly, I don't have a solution necessarily, but I'm saying more so I'm just being like, be ready for more rate hikes. And I think more aggressive rate hikes. Like there is at least another 100 basis points to come between by like, if not 200 basis points going into early next year.
Yeah, so the U.S. inflation numbers kind of coincided with the 75 basis point increase on their Fed rate. The next Canadian announcement is coming out shortly after this episode drops. I think the announcement's on the 26th or 27th, so somewhere in there of October. And the question is, like, right now the market is kind of pricing in a 50-point hike.
Yeah.
But there's some thought maybe with these numbers not being awesome, not being super
75
encouraging.
Lego.
And the Fed doing 75 points, that Bank of Canada may do 50 points as well. As you mentioned, we had Tiff here, and a couple of things that he stressed. I've got these highlights here. One, the labor market is too strong. He's saying, frankly, there's not enough job openings. However, I will say the job openings dropped in September from August, so there are less like job postings out there. But he hammered that point. He said the labor market is way too strong.
The labor market means there's too many people?
No, it means there's too many people. Like there's too little unemployment. There's too much demand for labor. Labor is too expensive.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
so the thing you can take
runaway
from
wages.
that, and I've said this in an earlier segment and kind of got not flamed for it, but the reality is until people start losing their jobs, inflation is not going to come down.
Yeah.
That is the reality of how it works. Even if you want to just go real fundamental, the graphs and how they interact and normal level of unemployment and inflationary pressure and all these things, like people are going to have to suffer in their take-home paycheck. The irony is, or the problem is, and this is why it's scary when monetary policy doesn't do what it supposedly does in the model, is that you need people to have less money at the same time that inflation is going up. Like that is a problem.
Down.
Like you are putting a lot of faith in this boy Tiff turning these dials and assuming that is going to fix things, while also suggesting people need to have less money.
This is why we're going to have a crash
chicken
landing.
and an egg situation, and it's dangerous.
That's why we're going to have a crash landing instead of a soft landing, because what ends up happening is they have to keep going and going and going, and eventually, like you're saying, it gets to a point where people don't have the money to pay for things, and the prices have gone so high. I'm just thinking in my head, I'm like, I'm going to be refinancing my private money into more expensive mortgages soon. Like, I'm getting out of this private loan at $999 into a nice fixed term at $14.99, 5-year prime loan.
Jeez, Murphy.
The one thing actually on that note is Walmart. I'm not sure if anyone noticed. It kind of went under the radar. I don't know if we talked about it, but Walmart suggests they're going to do price freezes on all their in-house brands in June. And so they were going to say like their price fix guarantee. They've always undercut inflation. And so they froze all their prices. In response, Loblaw has just announced, so Superstore, I forget what other brands they have, but Superstore, Atlantic Superstore, and Loblaws all have announced to freeze all the prices on their no-name brand until January of 2023 to help consumers fight.
Bullshit.
Wow, this is what I said. But because my thought is, why do you think they're doing it?
It's because this is actually working. People are not buying as much. Like orders are going, are being oversupplied. Like we talked about this before. This is how these interest rates trickle through the economy. The first thing is the housing market, stops, and then orders stop, and then profits stop, and then there's job loss. So we're at the point right now where orders are slowing down. And we talked about this even months ago.
This is a marketing promo. Instead of putting things on sale to get rid of the excess inventory, they're doing this, and people are like, oh, I'm going to shop there and buy these brands because I know the prices are fixed. The other thing is they're fixing the prices at the highest point that it's been, and now there's excess inventories. And so we're supposed to be having massive sales coming into this Christmas season, but instead they're all doing this thing of like, oh, we're here to save the people.
Yeah.
We want to save the people money. We don't want you to be impacted by inflation. So what we're going to do is we're going to lock all of our prices in at the highest point they've ever been and enjoy it, guys.
But if you want to take some optimism from that, like I think that this is because they currently are overstocked. Right, which means
eventually the prices will have to come off.
Yeah, which means they're at a point where they have over-ordered and their future orders are going to be less, which is phase 2 in the 4 trickling down components of these interest rate hikes. So this is why we're still in the midst of it. And it was really discouraging to see these numbers for September not be good, not be positive, and it doesn't bode well for other increases. But I still am optimistic that this is working its way through the economy as long as people realize that the last level of this is job loss, because that is what's going to have to happen. There is a counterpoint, like to what you're saying, which is we're turning these interest rates up and they don't seem to be doing anything. It's led some people to believe that, well, maybe this really isn't the issue. And maybe it is what you and I kind of talked about for some time, which is that this is a supply issue. This may even be a corporate gouging issue.
Well, of course, yeah.
Right? So maybe just making everyone lose all of their net worth and struggle to make their mortgage payments and have less money isn't the solution we need here. Maybe it's some other intervention, or maybe, and this is scary, there are going to be some things that are not in our control, which is reliance on trading with Eastern countries, reliance on stability in Europe and Russia for oil. Like all of these things, it turns out, are not entirely in our control. And now we eat it on pricing, and it doesn't matter what you turn the interest rates to. There's no interest rate that's going to make the conflict in Ukraine stop.
100%. I'm just, in my head, I'm thinking about, like, it's curious how we dumped all the money into the market. And I'm like, I look at how China did it, where they actually tried to put in infrastructure projects. I wish we had done something like that more so than just dumping money into the market when COVID took place. My thing that I think is really going to come of this is I really do believe there's going to be a freeze in immigration, because like you said, there's a supply issue, and that's not going to get fixed any short term. And I don't just mean for housing, I mean for everything, because immigrants don't just require a house, they also require all the products that go along with living. So I think this is going to put a freeze in immigration, which, again, I don't think it'll impact us immediately, especially where Halifax had such great growth, and the rest of Canada has too. And right now we have this oversupply, but eventually I think they're going to freeze it for multiple years. It'll perpetuate this slowdown. We'll have a slowdown next year because rates are so high, net worths are getting wiped out, and then they're going to freeze in the immigration, and then that'll continue it. So we'll have a extended slowdown from this. I think it's shaping up to be pretty bad. Like it's scary that they keep raising these things. They're artificially pushing things down. You got price freezes at Superstore and inflation still flying off the charts.
Yeah, I feel like 2023 is going to be a year like 2020 where you just kind of hope that you can just forget about it and it didn't happen. Like I think 2023 is going to be a drag.
When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.